Hello, and welcome to the third attempt at this video. First one, I rambled too much. Still did it in the second one, didn't care. You may find that in this video, and I'm going to apologize up front. And then on that second try, I hated the audio. It sounded awful. I currently use this mic here with a Rodecaster Pro 2. And I think, however, I have it routed in OBS, which is where I was recording the audio. I've got like a limiter and stuff like that, and it's absolutely cranked. So now we're going to go the influencer route today and have this stupid little thing dangling off my chest. I don't even want to hear. I don't even know why I have it here. So move this over. Right in the middle for everybody to see. How's that sound? Hopefully good. It's 32-bit audio unprocessed going in, so hopefully it should sound fine. Anyways, today, ladies and gentlemen, I finally have the camera I've been waiting for quite some time, and that is the Lumix GH7. You probably seen it in a thumbnail. I'm going to show you again. Let's get started and talk about this camera a little bit. So I am going to talk about why I purchased this. And obviously, full disclosure, this is something I purchased with my own money. I didn't get sent this camera. I don't have affiliates or anything like that. Would love to be associated with Lumix, but as of right now, even though I've been using their camera for the last 5.5 years, I don't have anything. So this was purchased fully with me. I did catch it on sale for $19.99 from B&H, I believe. And I think they were the only ones maybe running that. Nope, I got it from Best Buy. Everybody was running the sale. I got it from Best Buy because I have a pay for the yearly warranty kind of stuff with them. So if anything happens to this camera, I'm covered. I struggled pretty heavily with whether or not I should purchase this from a perspective of a wedding videographer. For me, I use a 3-cam setup during ceremony and then pretty much a 2-camera setup all throughout the whole rest of the day, depending on what's going on. My A-cam is my S5 IIX, which I have here, which I will be comparing the GH7 to. And then my B cam is the Lumix S5 II, so pretty much the same camera. There's really no difference between the two. And then my C cam was the Lumix GH5 II. I will link down below in the description if you want to see the video that I did on that. I love that camera. I love the way it felt, the way it held in my hands, the smaller lenses that you could get for it. And it was kind of hard to decide if I was going to actually replace that because I only use it for about 30 minutes to an hour a day. I wasn't sure that spending $22 or even when I got it on sale for $19.99, whatever it was, I didn't necessarily think that it was really worth replacing that camera because the GH5 II looks great as far as image quality. Is it as good as these 3 cameras? Absolutely not. It really kind of honestly doesn't even hold a candle to the wind. I'm not even sure if I use that expression correctly. It is a phenomenal camera. I think for the codecs that it has, you've got 4K 60, 4K 24 and 30, of course, that you can use. There's some 1080p settings on there. I think there's like a variable frame rate option to go a little higher than 60, I think 120 or even 180. And so, again, really hard with all of those features. Why would I need to replace it? Well, for starters, it was, again, the image quality. I needed something that matched a little closer to my S5 II and S5 IIX. Now, part of me thought about getting the S5 II again and just getting another 70-200. I currently have one 70-200 to work with these. It's the F4 version. Love that lens. It looks phenomenal. It performs very, very well. It's, weather sealed, all the bells and whistles that you typically get with a Lumix lens. But I already had lenses for the Micro Four Thirds system. That's where I started. I started with the G85s. If you're familiar with my channel, you know that's where I started a few years back with a podcast. And then I got the GH5 Mark II, and then eventually these full frame cameras that I have now. So for that, I already have this incredibly beat up 35-100 lens here. Hopefully this is focusing, and it's a great lens. I don't think it's bad at all. Still internal zoom, just like my 70-200. It's a 2.8, so you get enough, compression with it when you're zoomed in. And again, this was only used for a groom cam. So on the groom, it was fine. Autofocus was not that great, but it performed very well. Everything was fine. But the biggest issue that I had was I already had the GH5 Mark II. I had a few lenses for it. And then one of the major lenses I have that convinced me not to go with another full frame camera is this beast of a lens here. The 10-25 Lumix Leica variant G lens, specifically only for micro four thirds. It is one of the heavier lenses I own, just about the same as my 24-70. It's pretty much an all metal construction. It's a beautiful lens. I've talked about it on this channel before. It's a bit controversial with me because it's incredibly expensive. And I didn't think if I sold all of my micro four thirds stuff that I would get my value back. So because of this lens, I said it is time for the GH7. Now I want to tell you about some of the similarities and differences with this and how I would utilize this on a wedding day. So for starters, up front, you can see that we've got two function buttons here on the side, and then a red record button up front. Now that red record button is something I'm very excited about to try out because I typically have my cameras in a cage, as you see with the Black Mama cage on the S5 II here. And then what I do is I typically have a top handle on there with my monitor attached. And then as I'm holding that monitor up, I hold it with my right hand because I'm right-handed. Occasionally I have been doing left-handed. I've gotten used to that a lot. And then I can hit that red record button with my thumb. But if I want to go right hand and then kind of rest my hand under the lens to make sure, you know, it's stabilized and looks good and there's no jerky motion, I would have to take my hands off, hit record, and then put my hands back in the position that I want. Well, now I can top handle it and then hit this little red record button here. So that is an incredible feature that I'm very excited about with this camera body. As far as image quality, I think these three are pretty similar. I haven't gotten too many real world tests, say that 3 times fast, with this camera, and I'm very excited to be able to use it on a wedding day. I don't have any weddings scheduled anytime in the next few months, so I'm going to be trying to get some video footage and get some more for you guys, for anybody that might want to see more, but I will have some B-roll on kind of comparing the two different cameras between the S5 II and the GH7 here. I think so far what I've seen, they're pretty close. I've used both of these kind of for like a streaming scenario. I do a little bit of video game streaming just because I like using my cameras. I need to use them. They're just sitting here in the off season. Now, something that I'm excited about with this is having full vlog finally. The GH5 Mark II, if you're familiar with the very, very famous GH5 that this camera basically is born from, those had the Vlog L, which I'm assuming stands for light. I think I tried looking one day, never found what the L stands for. It's like a Vlog, but not full Vlog. And even in the GH5, that was a paid upgrade. It did come with the GH5 too. It was standard. But I never really liked the images I got out of it. One of my first weddings that I ever filmed, I actually tried to shoot with that Vlog L, and I was not happy with the way it turned out. I think I was able to make it look good at the end of the day and be able to create a nice film, especially for being one of my first ever. But it just never sat with me. So I never used it again on that camera. I typically shot with the natural picture profile, which is a major favorite that a lot of people like. But for me, having the full Vlog picture profile on this is incredible. Very excited about that. And so far the images, and you'll see the side-by-side test, that was graded from Vlog compared to the Vlog with the S5 Mark II X or Mark II, whichever one I filmed it with. Another cool thing about this, and if you see me looking and I don't cut it, again, my apologies. I actually took down some notes, so I hopefully don't ramble too much. Another cool thing about this is you can get the ARRI C profile. If you've watched any of the GH7 videos, you know everybody's excited about this. There are some great videos, and I'll try to link them down in the description, that kind of compared an actual ARRI camera to the ARRI C profile from the GH7. And they match pretty well. Is this a full-on ARRI camera? No, because it's, you know, I'm pretty good at math, but not when I'm trying to do it on the spot. I don't know, a 1/100th of the price of an ARRI camera. So it looks great though. It's phenomenal from what I've seen. I have not gotten an upgrade yet, so I won't be able to put any of that on screen yet for you. But in the future, I will be getting that profile because why not, right? It's a $200 paid upgrade. It's definitely worth getting, trying out, having some fun with it, because that's what filming is all about. Being creative, trying something different. One cool feature about this that I don't think has been talked about at all, and one of my favorite YouTubers, I can't remember which is good because I won't mention his name, but one of my favorite ones said there was a button here on the top, and you can kind of see it there. I'll hide my face. It's this little eye and microphone button. That button is a volume changing button. So if you hit that, it brings up your volume screen so you can, lower the gain or raise the gain in the camera. For me on the S5 Mark II X and the 2, I have the left clicked arrow here on the, I gotta call it the D-pad for the menu system. I have that set to my volume because sometimes I have it set perfectly and then I get inside, the DJ starts playing music and now it's way too loud and I'm clipping in camera, and I don't typically use in-camera audio, but if I want to be able to have that for any first dances or anything like that. My couples typically get the on-camera audio because typically it sounds pretty good because I am changing it and making it sound not clipped and destroyed. So to have this button on this camera, for me, is an absolute game changer. Another thing that it has is, just like the GH5 Mark II, there is a lock button up here that you could press on and off. And then there's also a lock button on the back here. So next to the play button, that lock button will lock all of the features. The one on top will lock this dial from spinning. So if you do lock it down, you can't spin this thing. For me, I never really cared about it on the GH5 Mark II, simply because this button is like, these are very well-built cameras. They're not cheap toys. That thing's not just going to spin on you like some old guitars that I used to have. It's clickable and it's kind of hard to spin. So it's a cool feature. I like it. I don't ever use it, but it is nice to know that if I am ever worried about it, or if I've got a cage or something that I'm trying to fiddle for a button through the cage, because none of these cages, except for one that I've seen, it's the Black Mamba for the GH7, none of them fit perfectly on the camera. So if I'm fishing for the record button or something, I don't want to accidentally touch that button or touch that dial and switch it away. We've talked about that there are 2 record buttons on here. So one on top, one on the front. Again, that to me is incredible because, again, when you have this thing rigged up, you never know which one you're going to be able to access better. The only thing I don't like is, compared to the S5 Mark II, that red button is farther back. And if I was to go left-handed holding and want to do what I've been doing for 2 years, that's going to mess me up quite a bit that it's back there. But I think I'll get used to it. I think it's fine. Lumix, don't worry about it. Do not take my comment with any grains of salt. Just ignore it. But to me, it's a little frustrating. But again, I'll get past it. Some other cool features that I'm sure you guys have seen. So we do have a normal tilt screen here for any of your vlogging that you want to do. But then it also pops up. And there is 2 different modes for that. So this is the first, and then this is the second. So a lot of times I find myself looking down like this, and I have to flip that screen out, and I'm going to show you why this is even better in just a second. But I typically flip that screen out, and I'm trying to look down, and I could barely see the screen. With this, I've already tried just kind of around the house doing that, and it is a game changer to have the screen like that, have it on a tripod, and know, if it's a little lower, I don't have to flip the screen out and take up even more real estate. It's right there. Flip it up. This screen, as every YouTuber has said out there about this camera, needs to be on every camera going forward. There's no reason not to put the screen on there, especially if you've already got it bulky with the fans and stuff like that. Why not just put the screen on there? Now, the thing I was going to talk about is I found it odd. I was looking one day and I noticed that the HDMI port was below the SSD. And on the S5 IIX, it is not like that. The HDMI port is up top, and the SSD is down below. And I noticed this actually, I think yesterday or the day before, looking at it, and I was very confused. I was like, why did Lumix do that? Well, I will tell you why, because everybody has complained, including myself, about the fact that when you have the screen out like this and you want to kind of tilt your screen, even though they added this awesome screen here, when you tilt it, you would hit the HDMI. So you could only tilt it about that much before you hit the HDMI. Well, now you can have it nearly horizontal. I've tried it, and you will not hit that HDMI. So It works better. I have heard some people say, well, why don't we put the HDMI on the right instead of the left? To me, that's kind of silly, only for the fact that at least my Shinobi monitor, and I think many of the other affordable monitors out there, maybe the Atmos Ninja, I'd have to look at it, has the HDMI input on the left of the monitor. So it's just a cable that dingles down. This will take a little to get used to. I don't typically use that USB-C port. I don't record in codecs high enough for weddings to utilize that. You know, some of the features on this, if you didn't know, it's got, you know, Apple ProRes HQ RAW, Apple ProRes HQ, and a lot of those you can record to SSD or CFS Express on this camera. I don't really utilize any of those. I don't own any Mac products except for my iPhone and iPad. So for me, I don't plan on editing any of the ProRes, but I like that I have the feature on here and the S5 IIX. It's not on the S5 II, but on the S5 IIX. So if I shoot for a client and they plan on editing and they want the ProRes files, I can get those for them. But so it's a little weird that the HDMI is lower, but the fact that it is lower so you can utilize your screen, I'm sure it's something we'll all work around as far as if we're going to utilize that SSD port. This camera, again, something I've been waiting for. You know, I talked about the struggle of why or if I was going to get this. And I can tell you this camera already so far paired with the 10-25 lens, or if you've got the 25-100, those are beautiful pairings. With Micro Four Thirds, you can adapt these to almost anything. There are a ton of cinema lenses. There are, I believe, native mount. There's no autofocus, but it is a native mount, like Sirui anamorphic lenses out there. You can pretty much put anything on this system, and it's going to look incredible. One of the most famous lenses out there, the Helios 44-2 or whatever it's called, most of the people selling those on eBay sell it with the M42 to Micro Four Thirds mount. So this camera is really designed to be an absolute cinema powerhouse without spending $65,000+ on a, you know, what is this, a Sony Venice or the Arri Alexa Mini or anything like that. It's a powerhouse of a camera. I am, again, very excited to utilize it with weddings, be able to see how this is going to perform. And quite honestly, this could become my A or even B cam instead of only a C cam. Sometimes weddings are tight, so to have this 10-25 range at 4K 60 would be game changing. And this is something I want to see in future camera updates, because these cameras are incredible, and it's going to take a lot to get these out of my hands. If Lumix comes out with an S1H Mark II and it's $4,000, but it has 4K 60 uncropped, I can't see myself really like buying that. Like, I've gotten used to it at this point. Why not keep going? But also now I have this. So now I can get a full wide 20mm if I'm in a tight spot, instead of going with my 24-70 with this and getting basically a 36mm field of view when I'm in 4K 60 at the very low end. So that is very exciting for me. The image quality looking very, very close. The only thing you're missing is a bokeh. And realistically, for weddings, I still shoot at an f2.8 or a 1.8, and I want that background blurred. But let's be honest, when we're shooting weddings, we have to understand these couples booked these certain venues for the landscape, what it looks like on the inside. And here we are as photographers and videographers, we're blowing out the background. I'm not shooting a full-on feature film right now where I want to blur some of that out. I did have one wedding, and it was one of my first that I needed to, but I was shooting Micro Four Thirds only, that I needed to because there was like some construction stuff set up behind, and we were fighting against rain, so we had no choice but to basically shoot against some of this construction, like orange tape. So for something like that, yeah, I want to blur that out. I want people to know what that is. It's a wedding film. It's supposed to be nice and not look like there's construction going on behind somebody's wedding. Now, one of the only things that I would say about this that there's a few things I don't necessarily like about this, but this isn't something that Panasonic, again, Lumix shouldn't worry about this. So one of the advantages of Micro Four Thirds that most people know is typically the cameras are lighter, and then you get smaller lenses. Like, this is the 70-200 equivalent. It's the size of this camera. It's incredibly tiny compared to my 70-200. That is a massive lens. And then if you want to get, you know, a 200-600 or whatever else is out there, I mean, you're looking at a very large lens in the full frame variant, but for micro four thirds, they're small. So typically they're supposed to be lighter, but because this is now air cooled for all these heavier codecs that they have in here and all the different features that are built in, plus the awesome screen that everybody loves, it bulks the camera up. So it's not as light as like the GH5 Mark II or the GH5, or certainly not my G85s that honestly feel like toys now. It's a bigger camera for sure. It's beefy, but it feels great in the hands, just like my GH5 did, and it feels professional. So it's kind of, you know, give and take here. We want the lighter. Now, if I paired this with a 12 to 35, it's going to be very light in the hands, and I'm not going to worry about it. I could still, I think, travel with this. There are a lot of different videos between the S9, the G9 Mark II, and the GH7. What would you travel with? And honestly, the two micro four thirds, because of the lighter lenses that you can, a 12 to 35, 2.8, these are better in low light now compared to the older micro four thirds cameras. Now, do they compare to the full frames? Absolutely not. 4,000 max ISO on this. I've shot up to 12,800 on the S5 II and S5 IIX in the natural picture profile, and I hardly see any noise, and it actually looks really, really good in my eyes. So these, I would not recommend going up that high. You will just start to get a ton of noise. If you tried that on a G85, you might as well just throw the whole image away. You won't be able to see anything. The only other thing, again, most of everything feels the same as all the other cameras. The menus are the same. If you're wondering about that and worried, like, well, that seems like an awesome camera and that seems like an awesome setup, but will it compare with my S5 II or 2X or the G9 Mark II or the S9? Yes, it will, because the menus are identical. As of filming this, yesterday there was updates for the multiple frame markers, the new autofocus detect systems. What else was there? There was the integration with the app, which I think is completely underrated, because now I can just hit record. If I'm by myself at a wedding and have my camera split up, I can hit record on the other camera instead of dashing back to it, change all my settings on the fly there. That to me is fantastic. At least ISO. I can't get the aperture, at least with this camera. I can't change the aperture or the shutter speed, but I can change everything else. I can even change, if I'm in real-time LUT, I could go ahead and change the LUT on the fly, all through the camera app. It is an underrated feature that nobody's talking about. Fantastic. But that's a video for another time that I could certainly do if you guys are interested. What these menus are the same. Everything is nearly identical. It's just no bokeh. Well, less bokeh versus more bokeh between the two full frame and micro four thirds. The only other thing, again, these are nearly identical. This thing feels better in my hands. The only other complaint I have is two things. One, the SD card door. Are we focused? I think we're focused. It's got this little notch here, and you have to pull it down and then slide out, as opposed to on the S5 IIs, you just slide it out. I almost broke this thing the first day I got it, because I was in the dark, very excited, and just like, oh, let me open this thing up. And I was trying to yank it open. It wasn't opening. And then I realized, because there's a latch on there, I guess it's good for safety reasons, but I don't like that. And then the fact that there's a CFS Express slot and then an SD slot, I don't like that at all. Now, one of my fears was I don't own any CFS Express cards. I understand why it's in there. It's for the Apple ProRes internal RAW that you can record, not have to worry about anything. One, that consumes a ton of data, so there's another reason I'm not really concerned with that right now. But I don't use that. So I was like, I'll get a CFS Express card for this eventually, but I was fearful that I was going to get this camera and not even be able to use it because it needs at least that in there. But that is not the case. It does have the SD card slot. It will work for all the codecs that I use. It will work just with that SD card slot. The only thing is there's no redundant recording. So if you are somebody that likes to record and have the recording go to both SD cards at the same time, while there is a dual card slot, if you don't have that CFS Express, you can't do both. I don't remember if you can, even if you have a CFS Express card in there. So I will try to research that, put it on the screen, put it down here somewhere with a yes or no. You can't, but that is a little bit of a bummer, but I understand why it's there. So again, I'm just complaining to complain at this point. It is a cinema powerhouse that this camera is. you have to light scenes. It's just important. Now, on a wedding day, you can't really control lighting too much. But again, from what I've seen so far, I don't think I'm going to struggle at all with this camera in low light situations or anything like that. And if it gets too low light, I swap to my S5 IIs anyways. Typically, when it comes to dancing, I swap to a 50 millimeter 1.7 so I can get, you know, as much light as possible. I'm sorry, the 1.8, because I get confused because this is a 1.7. But now I could use this, and I have a little bit of range. I can get a little wider, I can get tighter, all the way up to that 50 if I want, and not struggle again with dancing. Can I get this because I'm too tight on somebody's face or something like that? So there's so many different options that now I have with this camera, and I'm very, very excited about that. This really, really changed up my excitement for going into this year's wedding season. And if you are wondering if you need to buy this, if you've got a ton of Micro Four Thirds glass, or you have one of these beefy boys here, I would honestly recommend getting the GH7. If you don't have any and you're looking to invest and you have a budget for both to get you set up, obviously, to most people's opinion, the S5 Mark II or Mark II X really is the way to go. The Mark II X is typically cheaper than the GH7 to begin with. And a lot of times, not only is it cheaper, it comes with free lenses. I have never, and I could be wrong, somebody correct me in the comments, I don't think I've ever seen any of the Micro Four Thirds, the GH7, the 6, the 5, the 5.2, the 5S, any of those. I don't think I've ever seen any of those come with a lens for free. Typically, they are paired, and I think some of these places will do like $100 or $200 off or something, but it's not this massive discount. You are stuck basically paying for the full price of the lens and the full price of the camera. And the most common one I see is the 12 to 60, which has a variable aperture on it. And that's just not for me. I'd rather have the 12 to 35, a constant 2.8 instead of a 2.8 to 4 or whatever the 12 to 60 is. And then there's a 12 to 60 kit lens. It's older, and it's a good lens for starting out, but it's not good if you're buying this, you might as well pair it with really nice glass, in my opinion. But that's it for ranting. As I said, this was going to get ranty. If you stuck around this far, first of all, thank you so much. I hope I answered some of the questions as far as a wedding videographer. I know in this video, there wasn't a lot of footage of what this camera could do, just kind of the side-by-side of my face between the two. But there will be more to come. There will be more test shots. There will be things like that. There are going to be more videos. I've got some downtime in between now and when wedding season really starts. So even though I wasn't able to film much over the last year, and I kind of started off hot, and then pretty much all you saw was wedding videos from me, these next couple months, I really plan to kind of film some more of those weddings. So like what audio stuff I use. Spoiler alert, it's this, but not like this. It is done the right way. So what audio stuff I use on the wedding day. Outside, I believe I have the external recorder. If you haven't seen that, you can go check that on the channel, what I use at a wedding. And any of the other stuff I haven't really covered yet. And then also, I can't remember if I mentioned at the beginning, so I'm going to say it now. I am currently working on a documentary, kind of behind the scenes in the studio with a band, and I'm very excited about that. There are some friends of mine that brought me along in the studio, so I'm working on a rough cut now of the last time we were there, and then I'll be going back there in a few weeks, so to speak, maybe towards the end of February, I don't know yet, to do some more filming for their next set of songs that they're going to be recording. So very excited about that. There's a lot to come, hopefully, on this channel. I am going to do my best to keep up. And then if you like everything that I do so far, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe, as they say. I thank you so much. I hope you stay safe. Have a great week or weekend, wherever we are when this video goes out. And I will see you next time.